Awesome to welcome Tomekia Reed to the basketball podcast. In 4 seasons as head coach, Tomekia Reed has led Jackson State University women's basketball to the top of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. She's guided Jackson State to 4 consecutive berths in the SWAC Tournament semifinals, 3 straight berths in the conference tournament finals, 3 straight SWAC regular season titles, and 2 straight SWAC tournament titles, and NCAA appearances in 2021 and 2022. In making the program's second straight appearance in the NCAA tournament and the first as a 14 seed, Jackson State led in the fourth quarter and nearly achieving an historic win over number 3 LSU. Coach Reed, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It's going to be fun to talk to you. Incredible success, and want to dive into a whole bunch of things. But Coach, when I did research, self-efficacy came up as the word that stood out to me. And that's basically a person's belief in their capacity to achieve a desired outcome. So in other words, with high self-efficacy, which I feel you give your players, they believe they will go out and succeed in their task no matter what. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the ways that you've instilled belief to your players in the fact that they can achieve whatever task you put in front of them?
Well, that's a really good question. My first year here at Jackson State, and compared to my 4th year, I've had to recruit different type of players. And when I came in my first year, I had a team that I inherited from the previous coach. This was a team that was slated to finish 7th in conference. And I am not a 7th place coach. And so I quickly had to reestablish a culture and a belief within those players that they can be successful. They had come off a bad season the year prior. So it was really important to me to get them to really believe in themselves. And that's what we did. We ended up finishing 3rd. We got to the championship game in the first year, lost by 4. But we didn't have really, really good skilled players. We had players who finally believed, players who believed in themselves, believed in me as a coach, and believed in the program and what the culture was trying to go. And they worked their butts off. They won with hard work. And so as the years went on into my 4th year, I began to recruit players that matched me and matched my personality. Well, now you have a team full of all-stars. So you have freshmen who don't believe in themselves. You have players who you obviously have to recruit over to keep the program building who don't believe in themselves. So as a coach, my assistant coaches, we are constantly telling them, hey, you wouldn't be here if you couldn't do it. We're constantly showing them what their strengths are. And if you can get people to focus on what they're good at, that changes the whole dynamics. Now you can start looking at the weaknesses to help them be a total overall better player.
It's tremendous. And it's more than a motivational quote, isn't it? I mean, you have to live it and you have to model it. And I'm imagining that's a big part for you too, is that you model this confidence for them, don't you?
Absolutely. We have to, you have to be a representation for these players to give them hope that, they can do it too,
So I want to give a real example here, because what I think is remarkable is the difference between your last 2 NCAA tournament first round games, right? One of them you went into and clearly everyone was excited. You got there and you got blown out, for no other way to say it. You got blown out. But then this year, again, you had a real chance to be able to beat number 3 LSU. And I got to think a big part of that is the change in terms of how you approached it, but more importantly, how your players approached it. So you can talk about the 2 differences in terms of your lessons from the first to the second year.
Well, I have to be honest. I learned and I grew personally from that first game. My staff learned, they grew. But after we played Baylor last year, I can remember going into the locker room and I didn't like the feeling that I had. I mean, we had just won the SWAC tournament. We had just won the regular season SWAC championship. But now here we all feel like failures. And I told my team, let's not let this diminish who we really are and what we really accomplished. But I also came on the other side of that and said, we will be back and it's going to be a different showing. And I challenged my coaches to not only recruit better players who can play at that level, I challenged the strength and conditioning coach. I told her I want what Baylor does in the weight room. I want what South Carolina women's basketball do in the weight room. I want high-level Power 5 strength and conditioning programs with our program. And that's what we did. My staff went and got better players. You know, we brought the supplements, the nutrients. We implemented those weightlifting techniques. And we all year long, the terminology that I used with my team was, you guys are pros. Y'all are pros. Eat like a pro, sleep like a pro, walk like a pro. Every time you turned around, I was telling these young ladies how much they are of pros. And so I think that went into our preseason. You know, we were competitive in preseason against Arkansas, Texas, Miami, Ole Miss. We were really, Mississippi State, we were really competitive. And LSU was just on the clock. You know, we really wanted that game because we felt like that's the only part of our season a goal that we set that we didn't accomplish. And that was to beat a Power 5 team.
Well, your schedule showed that you were going to get them ready the best you could. And that, and again, one of the challenges of the schedule, and this isn't a knock on your league, is that at the beginning of the year, you're playing all these teams, and then you go into your conference season and you're not playing those same type of teams. And people don't appreciate how huge a challenge that is to then go back and play a Power 5 after having played your schedule, right?
You know, you are right on. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. I tell you, it was a struggle because in conference, we were beating teams by 50 and 60 points, you know, and I can remember Coach Prime, he's FaceTiming me now, Deion Sanders, he's FaceTiming me. I can remember him telling me, Coach, I'm going to bring some of my football players over there because you guys got to get better. He said, on the other side of this thing, you already know who you're going to match up with in the tournament. You got to keep getting better every day. So the next day in practice, I had a sideline full of football players. And we practiced against, you know, those guys and, you know, bigger, tougher, stronger. And we did that for every Monday, every Wednesday, we practiced against guys. And that helped us be tougher and just get prepared.
Well, and it also strikes me, make the big time where you are. When you reference some of those things, these lessons of, you know, these other programs, what are they doing? And can we do that here? Well, yes, we can do that here, but you need resources, you need support. And that's also something that I believe from reading about you and listening about you, that you've inspired the whole part of your school to say, let's support this because we've got something special.
Absolutely. And our athletic director, Ashley Robertson, he was just named the National AD of the Year. He has been phenomenal in providing the resources we need to be competitive. You know, when it comes to your nutrition, when it comes to the equipment you have, all of those things are important. You know, I tell people all the time, we don't have the charter flights, you know, we don't have those things, but the things that are most important are the things that we have and that we try to help our players get better with. You know, our resources are very limited, but I tell my players all the time, that means you have to work harder. Okay, you're going against Power 5 institutions that have whirlpools that they can go jog in. We don't have that. You have to work harder because not only do we not have the resources, you know, we're behind. So work harder. So that I mean, every day it's like a motivational thing for us to not be average, you know, and we use the resources to our advantage and the lack of to our advantage.
We've all been there as coaches. So can you give us some advice? How do we go to our athletic director and ask for something that we know involves money? Because usually, again, athletic directors will say yes to things that don't involve money, but things that involve money and saying, hey, listen, they're doing this. If you want us to compete, we need this. So can you give us some advice?
You said the magic words. You know, if you want us to be competitive, we have to get these different things. And our athletic director and most athletic directors are student-centered. They really want the best for their students. They really want to have a quality experience for the student athletes. And so anytime I can present a case that, hey, this is going to increase their experience, this is going to help us be more competitive, you know, these are the things that we need. Our athletic director, he comes in and he allows us to do those things. You know, we don't ask for anything that we know can't be done. And sometimes if you can say, I I'll raise it on the back end, or I'll help out any way I can on the back end. But if we can get it now, this would be awesome. Anytime they see you want to put in the work for it, they're willing to go over and beyond for you. And that's what I do for my athletic director. And we do raise on the back end. We get good money when we win a tournament. And we get good money when we go to the NCAA tournament. So it helps tremendously to get there.
Well, and the other part is these Power 5 games are also guarantee games, right? And to a certain extent, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, a lot of the smaller schools have to play these games to be able to generate income and budget, don't they?
Absolutely, we do. We have a certain amount we have to get in. And, at first I was like, oh, man, but now I love it. Mm-hmm. I want Jackson State to at some point be able to make a top 25 AP poll. How awesome would that be? And that has to happen with us beating some of those top teams, and you look at playing Texas last year. We lose to Texas by 12, and we missed 14 free throws, and Texas at the time were ranked number 8 in the country. So we're right there. And in order to do that, we have to play those type of games. But I mean, it's okay for me now to play those guarantee games because I want the challenge,
Well, the problem is they're not going to want to play you anymore.
Right.
Which is a good problem, but a challenge nevertheless, right?
I'm on a Zoom, Coach Prime.
What's up, Coach Sanders? I was just going to ask a question about you.
Okay. All right. Bye. Okay. Sorry about that.
It's all good. We'll stop for him any day. So, I mean, what a great segue. Coach Sanders, what are some lessons that you've learned from being around him? Obviously, self-confidence was not an issue for him.
He's a go-getter, and he came in with a mindset of leveling the playing fields. He came in with a mindset of helping HBCUs grow. And, obviously me being here before he got here, that was something that was a concern and a want and a need, but just didn't know the journey to help with that exposure. And that's what he brought to our program, and he brought to our university, the exposure for us to be a household name, for it to be okay to attend an HBCU. And so that's what he brought, and he's increasing our resources. He's bringing in money to help our locker rooms, our facilities. He's helping with that tremendously, and so it's been great having Coach Prime here.
Tremendous. And you also were an assistant with Teresa Weatherspoon, WNBA All-Star at Louisiana, and then at Louisiana Tech as a coach, and now with the New Orleans Pelicans. So can you talk about some of the lessons being around someone like that?
When I was around Coach Spoon, her and I, we laugh about it now. She's a master of details. And when I got in her presence, it was like, she wanted in skill development, if your hand is supposed to be in a certain place, she want your hand there. If your arm's supposed to be in a certain place, she want your arm there. When you're talking about a drop step, she's talking about where the placement of the foot should be, the placement of the ball. Don't drag it too far back when you're making a power dribble to make a move. She is so detailed. And for me, that was a great trait to pick up on, because now you're keeping your players from being average, and mediocre. So that was something I learned from her. I absolutely love her toughness, and her will, and her master details is just phenomenal.
You also reference watching film and learning how to watch film to a greater detail being around her. So can you talk about what you do now in terms of, let's say, a scout? What are you doing in terms of getting ready for a game and then watching the film?
Well, for me, I like for myself, I have my staff to do practice preps, and they do, if it's their scout, they'll do a practice prep. And in the practice prep, it'll tell me what we should do offensively. And it starts from our transition all the way down to our breakdown of post and guards. And it talks about the drills that they think will work in our in our practices to help get us prepared for that particular game. And they do it offensively and they do it defensively for us. And then they do an offense and defense practice prep for our opponents. And so I'll take that and I will input what my thoughts are in terms of what drills I think would be good for us. I'll take, for instance, the Texas game. I knew Texas was going to be extremely tough. I knew Vic Schaefer was going to have those players pounding that ball, getting to the basket. So we had a whole week of tough practicing. I mean, it was tough. And drills to make you just flat out want to quit. And we made them understand, hey, you're going to have to play at this intensity in order to have a chance at Texas. And I think it helped tremendously. So just watching film, coming up with a game plan, a lot of times it's about the X's and O's, but sometimes you have to look at the physicality part of it. You know, how are you going to stay in the game and be competitive and be tough? There's so many different things you have to look at and take into consideration when you're doing a scouting report, and not just the X's and O's.
Well, I love that. I love that you connected the scout to practice, and that determines what we do in practice that week to get ready for a specific opponent. Can you talk a little bit about that LSU week then? What was practice like that week? Because I'm imagining, again, you were walking around instilling belief in your players saying, we can do this, but what did the actual practice look like to got you ready?
Well, after we beat Alabama State in the SWAC tournament, I think we may have beat them by 20 points. I got into the locker room. There was not a lot of overly celebration. It was just kind of like a dead moment. And I was like, wow. And the team was like, what? And I was like, you all have more in your tank. You're ready to play some basketball. You do not feel complete. And they said, Coach, we're ready. We're ready. And so when we got the matchup with LSU, we didn't have to do much. They came to practice ready to go. That emptiness that they kind of felt and the more that they wanted, they were ready. The practice leading up to it was another tough practice. Again, we knew that Kim Mulkey did a great job of running her offense from a ball screen set. And so we knew we had to guard those ball screens. We knew her best players were her guards. And if we can contain the guards and defend the guards and slow them down and contain the post players, we knew that we would be in that game. And so that's what our focus was, defending ball screens. We defended the ball screens all year 2 ways. We worked on 4 different ways in practice. 2 ways were if we need to go to this, we'll go to this. But we worked on defending ball screens. We worked on being tough. We worked on picking up in transition. We worked on slowing them down because they were a team that liked to push and transition. So we worked on those things. And, you know, we watched the other SEC teams play and we kept trying to figure out, how did they only lose 2 games? Like, what is not being done? And so we watched those other SEC games and we just saw that nobody was padding gaps. Nobody was slowing them down. And, you know, nobody was getting up on the ball screens. They were letting them just do what they wanted to off the screens. So we changed that completely. And I thought our game plan worked. We just made minor mistakes down the stretch.
Definitely worked competitively, and I know you want a little bit better because you want the win, but it was great stuff. Great game to watch too. And then also I posted on Basketball Immersion is the tip play. And I got to think that's another mindset that says we're going right after them, right? Like, we're not going to shy back. We're going to attack them. And you ran a back screen off the tip play that worked great. Can you talk about that play? Had you run it before?
Yes, so we have several tip plays, and that tip play I knew would be great because the way I knew LSU was going to push up on us. You know, that's what Power Fives do to HBCUs. They push up for, you know, to try to intimidate you. And I knew that they were going to push up in those passing lanes. The first part of that play was a back screen by the player, a back screen for the player that tipped the ball up. And if you go back and watch, she was wide open. Yeah, on the left block. We could have easily went to her for a score right there, but I thought my players was going for the bang, and the bang was the tip ball, you know. And so after, you know, we pushed up on it, and the player that I ran the back screen for, she's extremely athletic and she can shoot it. So I knew that they would respect her had she drifted around the 3-point line, and sure enough, they did. And as soon as they came up to honor her that respect, we were able to set that back screen for the lob. I thought my player could have went up in air on the catch to finish it as a tip in, but she chose to come back down. But nevertheless, I thought it was a good executed play for the program.
It was a great play. And I'll repost it again with this podcast so coaches can watch it again. But a big thing that comes out in hearing your players talk about you and hearing other people talk about you is relationships. That you spend a lot of time developing relationships. Can you give us some of the practical ways that you do that you develop these relationships where your players believe in you and they believe in themselves?
Yeah, it's really important. One trait that I carried over into being a head coach is that relation, having that player coach relationship. You can talk to me, we can love on each other, we can have fun. I mean, I've been a recruiting coordinator at all my stops. And so being a recruiting coordinator, you have to be a relationship type of person. And I didn't want to lose that trait when I became a head coach. I still wanted to have an open door. I still wanted to, I get to practice early. When my players are stretching, I'm tapping on each one. I'm talking to each one, make sure they're okay. And just letting them know that I love them, because I'm so intense and I'm so passionate. As a coach, I get after it, and I need them to know before I get after them how much I love them. And I show them that off the court. During segments, when the ball is not in action or they're on the sideline, because when we in all four of those lines, it's serious basketball. No smiling, no laughing, no playing. But when they come to the sideline, I'll crack a joke here and there, and we'll kind of talk a little bit. But I spend a lot of time with my players, a lot of time, a lot of team building, a lot of team bonding. A lot of them come sit in my office and just kind of hang out. But I think that's really important, because when I get on them, I need them to respond and not get upset, but understand that if I get on you, it's a reason. I want the very best from you. So having that relationship is really important.
Well, and it shows, and you referenced defense already. You're talking about ball screen coverage and whatnot, and looking into some of the analytics. I mean, your program's a top 50 defensive team. And one of the things that stood out, especially, is defensive transition. That seems to be a real staple of your program. So can you talk about some of the things that you emphasize in defensive transition?
You are a very, very sharp coach. I tell you, you're good. You're really good.
Thanks,
and I'll tell you this. Transition defense is a major component of our program, and a lot of people don't know that. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty genius of you. We do a lot of transition build-up drills, and I'm telling you, we start in half court and we build to full court, and it's a joy to really see a lot of intensity, a lot of movement, a lot of cuts, a lot of talking, a lot of pointing. It's a really good thing that we do, and we do it every day. And we're so fun, and we're so fun with the teaching of it. We're so excited with the joy of it. Even though it's done every day the same way, they have fun with it. And so that's really, really important. We have a particular place where we stop the ball in transition. We don't push up on people for them to get by. And we have a position that we stop the ball, and we have players, depending on the point guard, who gets into position to pad gaps and slow the ball down. If a program tries to sprint everybody through to pull our gap people away, we don't pull away. We stay in our backsides, look to help if they have to. We understand that when that ball is passed, you move. Even if they don't let it go, if they fake it, we should be moving. And so those are some things that we do in our transition break. And I think those components are really important.
So are you forcing the ball a particular spot? Are you trying to force up sideline to middle, or is that scout dependent?
It depends. It depends on how dominant the point guard hand is. And if it's extremely dominant one way, we'll force the other. And also it depends on the best player. If the best player is a shooter and she's running, or a post player, and they love to get to the right side of the floor, we're going to force the ball to the left side, never let it get to the right. If the best player runs to the left in an offense, we have a language we use, and we get that ball forced away from the best player. So those are some things that we work on in our transition.
Well, it just speaks to the game nowadays, that this flexibility that you just demonstrated in terms of it's not a system, it's us doing the best thing that helps us in that game. It just speaks to the game, isn't it? It's so fun to coach nowadays when you do things like that, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And it's good to have players who can make that quick read and can make that happen for you.
Well, and shift and understand strengths and weaknesses and be able to force away from weaknesses, right? Yeah. And then I got to think part of this flexibility as well is coaching this generation. It's just a little bit different, isn't it? Coaching this generation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It is. We, this transfer portal has made it where you have to recruit your players over and over again. It has made it where if the players don't know how much you love them, they will not accept your tough coaching, and they will enter the transfer portal. So it's a little bit different. Your approach has to be different. And that's why you have to lead with love. You have to lead with care in order to get the very best out of these players in this new time. The transfer portal has turned this thing around, and it has made it different for everybody, for sure, across the board. So you have to coach a different type of coaching with a different type of passion now with this generation.
Well, and you've already referenced this, like the challenge is to balance that with coaching them hard so that they get better and that they improve still and they enjoy their experience, because that is part of their experience, that they feel valued by you, but also that they improve. And that's a hard balance, isn't it?
It is. And you not only have to show that balance with your starting five, you got to show that balance with the next three, because I play 8 to 9 players. And then you have to show that with the players who may never touch the floor, and that's why a lot of coaches don't carry that many players, because it's really tough making sure everybody is happy. Because the ones who aren't touching the floor, they are just as important as the ones who are on the floor. And you have to make sure that balance is within the program across the board, that everybody feels love, attention, needed, of value. You have to make sure you show them that.
So speaking of balance, I imagine as well, like part of your next level challenge to get your program to even higher level is to balance out the defensive success with the offense, right? To get the offense to your next level. And I'm wondering, what are those challenges beyond just recruiting players that play better offense? What are some of the things that you're looking at in this offseason to be able to help you build that offense to the next level?
Well, you're exactly right. I think we have next level type of players, and we have a 6'6" 5-star McDonald All-American, a 6'5" 5-star, number 6 in the country players. And I mean, it's for me, they are true back to the basket post players. Mm-hmm. So, and then we have phenomenal guards. So for me, I just want to be able to implement a system that everybody can be successful. And to be quite honest with you, a lot of times it's going to start on the defensive side, because you don't have that many possessions in the game, especially when you're playing a very good defensive team who focuses on cutting your possessions. You don't have a lot of possessions. And so it doesn't give you an opportunity to put that many points on the board. So for us, we have to speed it up on the defensive end. We were number 4 in the country in points per game. And I think we were right at 78 points a game. So that came from defense, and scoring in our transition and off steals. So for me, going into bigger games against Power 5 institutions, you have to be really disciplined. You have to execute your sets. And, I don't like quick shots. And I'm not one of those coaches that say, use the clock, lengthen the possession. No, take the best shot. If the best shot is 25 seconds on the shot clock, take it. If the best shot is 2 seconds on the shot clock, take it. But that's what it comes down to for us.
Well, and you referenced obviously talent, and I know you've done well with transfer portal and you've done well with recruiting, especially the state of Mississippi, which I know was a big emphasis for you. But how about this? Misha Williams-Holiday, WNBA first draft pick from an HBCU in 20 years, coach. What an accomplishment for you in the program, and especially for her.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm extremely proud of her. And it has been an ongoing process trying to make sure that she has the appropriate exposure to be afforded this opportunity. And, I've always told her that she was a pro. I've always told her, we're going to get you there. I made phone calls to coaches. Hey, what do I have to do to position her to get a look by the WNBA? How do I get her drafted? What do I have to do? And she was, a lot of coaches would tell me, Coach, don't focus on getting drafted. Just make training camp. If you can get her in training camp, that'd be great. And so she put up really good numbers in preseason versus some really big schools. And so I think that helped her tremendously. And the WNBA sent me an email wanting to put her on the draft, and I went crazy. I mean, it was about 25 pages of information to complete, and it was just such a big thing for us. And I told her at the draft party, if you don't get drafted, you have already made history. You are on the draft board, and we're going to celebrate either way. And with her getting drafted, we had, CNN, Sports Illustrated, Ebony Magazine, Chris Paul, Tomekia Catchings. You had all of these celebrities. I don't know if you're familiar with the Shade Room, but the Shade Room has millions and millions of billions of followers. And she was on there. And, you have seniors like Erica Baidu, who's liking her post. And, it's just been a really blown up situation. It's been really good. So now you have top players in the country that's in the transfer portal who are liking her messages.
Awesome.
Who are, and every message, everyone I see that I like, hey, you want to come? You want to come? You can be the next one, So, but no, it has certainly been great. And I told her, you're a trailblazer. You're going to open up the door for more to go from HBCUs.
That's tremendous. And you know what? The story reminds me of so many of my experiences coaching at a small college where I recruited players that I knew I probably wasn't going to get on the front end. I just knew they were going to go. I was a Canadian coach. They're probably going to go Division I in the US. But I would say, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. If it doesn't work out, I'll be in touch. And that's right. Exactly what you did. You just nurtured a relationship that you weren't going to get her maybe at the beginning, but it didn't work out and you got her later. And look at how that worked out.
Absolutely. Such
a great story, and so happy for her success and yours. Coach, a few of your quotes that stood out, and I love your Twitter account too, because it's again, you're half motivational and half promotional and just real in so many ways, which I think is wonderful for coaches to be themselves. And some of the quotes that I want you to talk about a little bit is one of them was, anyone who's going to do big things can't let small things get to them. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Along our journeys, it's a lot that's going to happen. And when you are destined for great things, that's when everything starts coming against you, and you have to embrace that. You can't allow that to give you a moment of quit, or I can't, or I don't want to, or I'm not built for this. You can't allow that to set in. You have to embrace the fact that in order to achieve something great, you're going to have some forces coming against you, and you can't allow that to get to you. So that's why I posted, you can't let small things get to you when you're accomplishing greater things. And I just think that's really important.
Now, those quotes, are you sharing them with your players too? Are you talking about those? Are those things that you talk to your players about too?
Absolutely. I do. Right now, I don't bother them right now. They are in their final week and they're getting ready to go home. And I told them, you won't hear much from me until May 2nd. And May 2nd is when they'll start back working out. But I screenshot my quotes and I send it to them. A lot of them follow me on Twitter without following me. If they come trolling is what they call it. And they will see some of my posts, and because they know, Coach, they know when I post it's from the heart, and they are worried about me. Coach gonna leave us. Coach not happy, and I have to tell them, no, I'm okay. I feel like it's my duty to help someone else get over the hump, to help encourage someone else. And so they're always on my page, and every now and then they'll screenshot and they'll share in our group text, a post that I make. But in practice, I'm always giving quotes. And they call me the walking quote book.
That's awesome. Hey, Coach, one of the ones that got the most attention was this concept which you shared, which is parents, please stop telling your children to do what makes them happy. And I love the context of that. So can you explain that a little bit to everyone?
Yeah. This generation, okay, this generation compared to your and my generation, our parents made us do what we committed to do, correct? We didn't have an option. The first thing our parents told us when things got tough is, you made a commitment. You better stick it out. You better find a way, adjust, and get it done. They didn't give us another option. But this generation is the parents, when players are facing, or kids are facing a tough moment, a tough challenge, when they're at the point of making a decision, well, what do I do? And should I leave? And the parents say, well, do what's best for you. No, you're giving them an option to fail, to quit. And, don't allow them to quit something that they started. Now, if they're being mentally abused, if it's just a very bad situation, I totally understand. Get out of there. Don't go down that road. But if you're not being hurt, if you're being challenged, accept it. Don't run from it. Stay committed. So, stay to the end. And that was a personal experience tweet that I put out there. That was something that happened. And I felt like that young lady who made the choice to leave our program, it just went downhill from there, but you never gave me an opportunity to help you be a better young lady. You saw a challenge and you walked away. And so I never stopped loving her. I never stopped talking to her. I still talk to the parents, but I just think we should tell our kids, honor your commitment, unless it's detrimental to your mental state. Then that way you have to leave. But if it's not, honor your commitment.
It strikes me as like my daughter told me that, one time someone forgot their homework and the parent drove the homework to school. And I told my daughters, I said, listen, if you ever forget your homework, it's your consequence. And I'm not driving it to school, that's for sure. And it's that type of thing that, again, kids just have more options nowadays. So it's easier to move on from something. There's just more options, aren't there? And that's such a tremendous way of saying it, Coach. I mean, as long as safety is not a factor, find a way to persevere. Now, also create the condition, because I think the most important thing of what you just said is, I'm not going to leave you on the island. I'm going to help you. So talk to us a little bit about that process, because you have players in your program that struggle at times. How are you trying to help them in those ways?
Yeah, I have a very sharp spirit of discernment. And so I can see when players are not having their best days. And I tell the players when I recruit them that their experience is so important to me. And I tell them all the time, even if you have problems that are not basketball related, that are not university related, I'm going to always want to know, because I can help you get through those problems. I think I've been through enough in life, and that's my testimony to be able to help players get through their challenges and their problems. And so I always have my staff on alert. Hey, let's make sure we keep an eye over here. I feel something developing. Hey, make sure you check on her. Hey, you guys go talk to her. Hey, go eat lunch with this player today. I try to stay on top of it in that sense, and my staff does too, because that's really important, especially with the mental health component that is becoming so out there today. A lot of players are having those mental moments. And so we just want to help ease them through that. And I always offer help, counseling help, therapy help. I never really try to diagnose a situation or try to, take over a situation, but I listen and I give, communication and advice based on what I've been through and based on my spiritual faithful side. But that's really important to know when your players are struggling and be able to help them through those moments.
I like how you said that, Coach, because I think too often the media and parents portray coaches as we can do everything, but we're not experts in everything. And that's part of our job that you referred to, is that part of my job is guiding you to the people that can help you and having support staff and different people around you that can help support that player as well. And that's obviously such a big component of all this. Coach, another great quote of yours is there's no need to negotiate your worth, and don't allow people to shrink your value. And this is such an inspiring thought. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. All too often, people have great success, and, we're told that you gotta go ask for this, you gotta go ask for that, you gotta get an agent to do this and do that. And my thought for that was, why? Don't you see what has been done? Why do I have to come up and negotiate that? When you are doing something that's never been done, when you're doing great things, you should not have to negotiate how much you're worth. People should take care of you. And I said that to say, even if you never get what you deserve in life, people, everybody, don't ever let that shrink your value. That doesn't matter. It's just another challenge that you have to overcome. Keep working. You may never get the reward from man here. You may never get that reward, but never let that shrink your value and what you see in yourself and your ability to accomplish great things.
It's great stuff. And circling back a little bit, I know coaches will want me to ask about the ball screen coverage stuff you mentioned. So you talked about two main coverages. So your base defense has two main coverages, and then you have two coverages that you can go to. And I'm just curious, first of all, if you can outline, because you mentioned one being aggressive, is the other one a little bit more passive, or yes, what are your two main coverages?
So we like to ice the ball screen. And that is a component, as you all know, that's a part of your gap defense.
Yep.
So we were ice in situations, but LSU was a very good team who snaked the ball screens. They did a great job with that. I watched them do that. So we had that to go to if we needed to, and the adjustment we would have done with our ice is bring our post player toe a lot higher to meet the guard defender's toe, so you can't snake it, and give our guard an opportunity to keep them from using that screen. And we were teaching them how to run through and not allow them to fake the screen and come downhill. But on the run through, now we're taking away the downhill action, keeping the ball up, giving our post time to recover on a rolling post, if that all makes sense.
It does. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we ice ball screens. And the other thing that we did was for LSU, we hard hedged the ball screen. We hard hedged without losing post connection, and our guards went underneath. LSU they were not great shooters off the pull up if the hand was there, and so we made sure our post players, when their post ran up to set the screen, we got behind and we forced a higher screen. So we wanted that screen to be set really
so you
high.
Squeeze the screen higher?
We squeezed the screen higher, and then we hard hedged it. Absolutely.
Wow. And then when the hard hedge, you said they didn't separate from the post. So was the screener's defender, were they holding the hip type of thing?
Yes. Yeah. So the screener's defender was holding on to the hip with an extended arm, so we could get a hand up on the shot if they decided to shoot behind the screen. The post was to defend that shot. The guard forced the screen. We forced them to use the screen. Them faking and keeping off the ball was that was not an option. So we forced them to use it, and our guards met underneath. And so the post player's hands up was to deter any shots behind the screen, and the guard meeting was to deter any further downhill action. So that was how we defended the screen. The other way we worked on was trapping the ball screen. I was a little nervous to trap because my big that's now in the WNBA she was so valuable to the program. I did not want her to pick up a foul, but we worked on other bigs being able to go out and trap that screen. That was something that we didn't use at all because the game was too up and down. The tempo was too quick, and I didn't want to speed LSU up anymore. And sometimes trapping will speed you up. So we didn't do that, but we worked on trapping. And the other way we talked about was plugging, very passive. Very passive. Our post players lost connection with their screener and just kind of plug and mirrored in the gap of the guard coming off.
So more of a drop type coverage.
Right. Yeah. Right. And we didn't use that either. So
well, Coach, thank you for describing those. That's awesome to hear. And, the technical tactical part of the game is so fascinating. So talking about that squeeze and then that show, had you done that previously? Have you used that much that previous year?
No, we not at all.
Yeah, and your players were able to handle it. That's
yeah.
And I'm curious then about them being able to adjust and handle that. I got to think that reflects how you practiced all year. That your players are not used to this routine of practice. They're used to you throwing different things at them and them having to learn how to adapt. Is that part of the practice philosophy?
Absolutely. We are always mixing things up, and we're so hard to scout because we never do the same thing. Mm-hmm. We ran 4 to 5 new plays against LSU. We ran new sets they hadn't seen. A lot of our sets were Tomekia sets that we got. She was at Baylor.
Awesome.
So we ran a lot of new sets, and we drilled it. And I can remember being in practice, teaching them how to carry the screen up on the squeeze and hard hedge. And it was a tragedy. And I can remember stopping and screaming like, listen, if you want to win, you got to get this. And so they understood like, okay, all right, let's lock in. We got this. And I mean, they really was focusing on getting that part done in our defensive scheme.
You talked about the new plays on offense, and I'm curious then, what is your process of introducing those plays? Because again, your players are used to it, that you're going to introduce some new things. Do you have like this base reaction type system for your offense, the play after the play, so to speak, but then you can introduce new entries or new attacks or new primary plays?
Yeah, I like quick hitters more than motion sets.
Yep.
Motion sets, you have to have an extremely high IQ and you have to be extremely in-depth in your teaching. And I am more a defensive coach than I am offense. So I like to not spend a lot of time on the offense. But with the quick hitters, they work in our favor because we have very athletic players. Now, I will spend a great deal of time on my offensive break, my primary and my secondary break. I have so much action in that by the time it's time to get to a set, you're really running a quick hitter. So that's where we are with in terms of the sets. Now, I like to do where I will bring in the team and I'll throw a set out. And I call this my board training. So I'll draw the play up and they have to go execute it. And so now I see who can properly look at a board and take it to the floor and who can't. So I do that a lot, especially down the stretch in the season, because based on how a team is defending us, I want to be able to do a certain type of play, but I need to know that you can go out and execute it. So when we go into games, sometimes we won't run the play over and over and over again. I'll show it to them one time. And I think if they can run it one time, the next time they see it, they'll have it. And
is that one time 5-on-0 or one time 5-on-5?
5-on-5.
Good.
5-on-5. And you have to execute. And if the first option isn't open, I tell them which options to go look for. And because, we're competitive as coaches, we really want our plays to work. If they miss the first option, you're like, dang, run it again, and so you make them run it a couple of different times and so they can see the reads of it. But after that, I don't really show them again. The next time they see it, it may be 5-0 and it may be really quick. But the next time the execution comes into play is when I draw it up in the game.
For me, part of that board training that you reference is also me getting to try some plays and seeing if it works, right? Is that the same for you?
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah. Like you saw something, you go, okay, let's try this. Let's see if it works for us. Because sometimes it works for others, but not for us.
Right.
It's such a fun part about coaching. Coach, this has been so fun. And another unique thing is that you have a deaf player, Alexis Roberts. Can you talk a little bit about that process of coaching a deaf player? And then obviously the success she's had is tremendous.
Yeah, Alexis Roberts, I started recruiting her when she was in 8th grade. We started looking at her, and they attend the Mississippi School of the Deaf and Blind. They stay on campus, and I just watched her grow at that institution, and she's just been phenomenal. She's a young lady who can read lips extremely well. She does a great job with allowing us to have our own type of communication, and it's okay. I was so worried that I wouldn't say a word right, or I wouldn't sign something right, and it would offend her. And I would always say, "I'm so sorry. I didn't say that. I didn't do that right. I'm sorry." And she would say, "No, it's okay." And so then it began where we just started doing our Jackson State sign language, and so it was a very cool thing to do. Alexis is a very tough player, and I love her ceiling in terms of her growth. She's a freshman for us. She was selected to play for the United States Deaf Olympics team, in the Deaf Olympics. And, she told us that one of the reporters asked her, "Have you ever seen yourself accomplishing something like this?" And she said, "No, I never dreamed this far." And I started crying. I could not hold it in, because that's just so amazing. And to see so many dreams come true in this season, it's just been phenomenal. And Alexis would go to Brazil to represent for the United States. And they cannot, some of them wear hearing aids, which she does, but they can't wear their hearing aids. The officials would be deaf. The coaches are deaf. Everybody's deaf that will be affiliated with the basketball team. And so wearing hearing aids is one of the things that they cannot do in the Deaf Olympics. They have to really communicate with their sign language and with reading the lips. And so I'm extremely proud of her. I'm actually trying to get my passport now so I can go support her.
That's awesome. Coach, just another amazing story, and all of your success at Jackson State, and just so wonderful to have you share with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.